Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliette Clark, and I'm really excited for our guest today. I met her at Media Magic. She was one of the other mentors there. Love what she had to say. But before we get into introducing her, I want to remind you guys to go over and get your free subscription to Breakthrough Author Magazine. You can get that at www.breakthroughauthormagazine.com. Also, if you're someone who likes to watch this on video, you can go over to YouTube and follow us at Superbrand Publishing. Please subscribe over there. And if you're somebody who reads, go over to our website. The blog is posted over there. It's really interesting. You can listen to it over there as well. Superbrandpublishing.com/website. Superbrandpublishing.com/podcast. So today's guest is Toni Lontis, and she's an online broadcaster. She's an international radio and TV host, best-selling co-author, speaker, and visionary. Toni Lontis quietly entered the entrepreneurial world in 2019, post-publication of her memoir, Resilience. After 35 years of nursing, from clinical practitioner to running her own nurse consultancy company, Toni wanted to write a book. She wanted to talk about what it takes to heal from dysfunction and trauma in her own life to create heart-centered impact and help others heal. With the publication of the book came the audiobook production, and Toni was introduced to the power of the spoken word. A chance conversation led to a meeting with an American media company, and Radio Toni was born. From these humble beginnings grew a love of interviewing businesses and people about life and business and the universe. Her intuitive interview style has taken the world by storm. Toni now has multiple live streaming TV radio shows and series of co-hosted business shows on different platforms based in the US and broadcasting to the world. Please welcome to the stage, broadcasting dynamo, Toni Lontis. Welcome, Toni. So you guys, before we get started, I don't think I mentioned in the introduction, she's Australian. So she is wearing makeup at 7 a.m. And we can't tell you how much we appreciate that because I wouldn't be wearing makeup at 7 a.m. So welcome.
Hi, Juliette. It's okay. I'm getting used to getting up early just so I can talk to my wonderful American friends and connections. It's not a problem.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. So you have a really interesting story. I wouldn't have ever guessed that you would be in broadcast media today because you started out a nurse.
I know. I tell people that and they look at me in disbelief, but part of that story is around discovering your life path or what you're meant to do. So yes, when I left school, there weren't a lot of options for girls. So there was teaching, nursing, or a bank job. I applied to get into uni. I got into psychology, and I was going to do that. However, nursing came up first, and that's what I did. So I embarked on a nursing career back in the days when nurses were still trained in big general hospitals and had a very diverse training across many specialities, which was very good.
Oh, good. So in addition to what you do in the broadcast, you also do a lot around self-care too. And I would assume that nursing comes in really handy with that.
Well, Juliet, a part of my story, and I guess to explain that in depth, is that because I went nursing, and back in the days when I went nursing, mental health was something that you frowned upon. It was not talked about, and it had a huge stigma. And bringing that into my own story, I recognize retrospectively that I probably started to have the tentacles of depression in my mid-teens, so around about 15, I think that started to kick in. Because I went nursing and because there was a stigma, I actually never got help for that until I had a major breakdown in my 40s. And so it's important, the self-care, I had to learn how to care for myself. I had to learn what rejuvenated my soul. I had to learn how to love myself. So by the time I got to my 40s and had that first breakdown, I was pretty beat up by life and circumstance. And so for me, learning those things and learning how to love myself the way everyone should love themselves was an important part of my healing. And that's why I'm passionate about it. And particularly for women, because we are the multitasking, creative generators of the universe. You know, we birth children without subconscious thought, and we do that naturally. So we have a lot going on in our heads, and if we don't look after ourselves, we rob the world of what we could create.
Yeah, that is so very true, because it's so you can't create from exhaustion. That
No.
is just absolutely, there's no two ways about it. There's just no room for
Yeah.
it in there.
Yeah.
So you went from this nursing career. Why did you tell Bob? Why this?
Okay, so the bigger story, and just a little trigger warning. I always do that now because someone in my audience one day said, "Oh, you need to warn people before you tell your story." So hereby be warned. So, as I said before, I had that background of depression and anxiety, but to begin with, I was actually born with a congenital facial defect called a preauricular sinus. Now, the problem with these little defects is that they're nasty, they get infected all the time, and unfortunately, in my case, after a huge infection and I think 3 surgeries to fix it, they either damaged my 7th facial nerve or it was nicked in one of the surgeries, which resulted in left-sided facial palsy. So in my younger years, the left side of my face, I couldn't smile properly. I couldn't raise my left eyebrow. My eye weeped. My mouth dribbled at night. It was difficult to eat. So all of those things in my younger life, bullying, dysfunctional family, and then into my 20s, I carried that low self-esteem, that background of anxiety, and I made really bad decisions. When you're vulnerable, you have, let me say, a target on you for people who seek out to hurt vulnerable people. And it's one of my messages that I like to remind women. If you're in a vulnerable state, be very, very, very careful of yourself and in particular your children. But in my 30s, still bad relationships, domestic violence, divorce, sexual assault, which brought me to my 40s. And in my 40s, as I mentioned before, at that time, and this is often the case with high-performing women with a background of trauma and mental health issues, we still perform incredibly professionally within our scope. And so by that stage, I was actually coordinating statewide networks for anaesthetics, perioperative operating theatres, for the state government. So that high-level clinician role in implementing policy and process around elective surgery, around anaesthetics, around service delivery in healthcare. So functioning quite high. On the day that I unraveled, let me say it that way, all it took was a simple conversation with a colleague. And I can't even remember what it was that she said to me, but I started crying and I could not stop. And that distressed me more than anything because I was a high-functioning professional and here I was blubbering my eyes out. However, biggest blessing of my life, because I took some time off, and after 3 days of not being able to figure out was going on with me, I finally went to my doctor and I told him what had happened, what'd been going on. He asked me about my life, and then he sat me down and said, "Toni, you're having a major depressive you have a major depressive order and you're having a physical and mental breakdown, and here's what we need to do. We need to stop you working. You need to end the stress and high level roles. You need to take some time off work, short term or long term. We need to try some medication immediately, and you need to get some help and counseling and therapy." he said, if you don't, you may not make it to 50. Because at that time when I went to see him, I'd started to have elements of suicidal thoughts as well. So this was a very dark, black place. Had he not said that to me, I probably wouldn't have taken him seriously, and I probably wouldn't have started my healing and self-discovery journey that brings me here today. Now, into that environment, I was off work, and my almost adult daughter had started spending a bit more time at home when I was at home. Now, without going into too much detail, within a very short space of time, she disclosed a history of sexual assault at the hands of the man that I was about to marry in a very short amount of time. So that is the space where I started to grow, heal, and learn. And 10 years after that, I was back in nursing, but in a role that was more manageable. So I had my own consulting company, and I zapped across Australia, prepping day surgeries and small hospitals to meet the national safety standards. So gap analysis, risk management, process policy, education, planning, which was very nice because I got to work with small hospitals one-on-one and make sure they were ready to meet these compulsory standards. Very nice. And I did that and did quite well, but kept thinking that there had to be more. And as my healing journey progressed, people, and I started to talk a little bit about my story, people said, you need to write. And as part of my healing, I'd done a lot of journaling and self-reflection. So I had the content for a book. And eventually I shut down the business. I sat down in July 2018 and wrote the book full-time till November 2018 and published it in 2019. Now, of course, I thought it was going to be a bestseller, and I would trundle off around the world being a speaker and talking about healing, etc., etc. On a side note, the more I healed, the better my face got. So after 40 years, the nerves in the left side of my face, particularly around the bottom of my face, I developed a dimple, the dimple that you can see here.
Yes.
That happened in my 40s.
Oh my gosh.
I healed. My smile started to heal. And of course, I discovered what it's like to be joyful and feel it in my face, which I can tell you, what a blessing, because for many people, smiling's unconscious. You don't think about it, you just do it. But for me, I feel those muscles and nerves kick into life every time I smile. What a blessing.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, that moment, because I think I had not as dramatic as yours, but I had a moment when I was going through a divorce in my mid 40s.
Yes.
And I don't know if you heard the story on Media Magic, but I sat down and I wrote a mystery novel and I killed my ex-husband in it because I was just, I was going through a really tough time.
Juliet, what a great idea.
I know, right? But how difficult, just because I had gone from a very high functioning job as well to, I had to decompress. How hard was that for you? Because I found it really hard. I think I almost moved and functioned really high to avoid.
Correct.
But I needed to heal.
I was going to say, Juliet, those 10 years of healing were tough. So when people make that decision to start to work through their trauma and start to heal, it's hard work. Like, truly, it's the hardest work you'll ever do. But conversely, it's the most amazing process for you and for the people around you. And I have to say that I'm so grateful for that terrible, terrible, horrible period of time, because I learned so much about myself, and I continue to make that a priority, learning about myself and continuing to heal and making sure that I'm living my best life. Because if I don't do it, and if I don't walk it, and if I don't show it, that I want to give all women, all humanity, men and women, but particularly women, I want to show by example. I want them to know that it's okay to sit in that dark place and do the work, because you will come out the other side. There's no doubt about it, Juliet. You would know. You come out the other side and you are forever changed. And that is a blessing. That is a blessing in your 40s, 50s and 60s. I think it is the best time of a woman's life. There is wisdom, there is confidence, there is faith in yourself, and you'll only glean and gain those things if you do that work in the background. And it's tough.
It is tough work. I'm going to share a story. My daughter's probably going to kill me, but she doesn't listen anyway, so she'll never know unless somebody tells her. We are actually taping this during May, even though it's not going to be till July coming out, but it's Mercury Retrograde.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And so I'm telling her, like, this is what Mercury Retrograde's all about. And oh my gosh, there's this thing coming up for me and this lesson learned. And she starts telling me, and I said, well, what's your lesson? You always get a lesson out of this. And she says to me that I'm better than everybody I work with. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's the lesson. I think you need to go back to the drawing board, and this is going to come up again. 3-year-old who hasn't been through what we've been through.
Yeah.
And doesn't understand that you have to look at what is that lesson I'm supposed to learn, because I'm tired of learning it.
I know. And that's the other thing, Juliet. You do actually have to take a break periodically, because it's like, oh my God, I don't want to learn anything else. Oh my goodness.
You do.
But you have, if you take those breaks, then you come back refreshed, and it's like, okay, what's next? What do I need to learn now? And that's a good, because it brings to the universe more wisdom, and it creates better energy. And the globe needs better energy at the moment, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So you have an online broadcast.
Yes.
Tell us, what is that, and how did you get into that?
So after I'd published the book and thought it was going to be a bestseller, I then thought that because I love audiobooks, so I thought I'd really like to produce the audio version of the book. And a friend of mine has an audiobook production company, and she said to me, I'll help you out with that. And I was going to get an actress to do it. And she kept saying to me, no, you need to read it yourself. And I'm like, no. So I'm introverted by nature. And I was very shy post-trauma recovery. And I didn't like people a lot, so I wasn't going to show up in a public way. So she kept saying, no, I really want you to. And I'm like, eventually I gave in and said, okay, so I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. And she said, that's okay. I know. I'll help you. We'll get through it. It was a very cathartic experience. There is something completely different from writing your story versus speaking it out into the universe. So, and I was unprepared for that change. However, she was amazing and supportive, and after lots of tears and hugs, we got through it. And at the end of that, I thought, okay, so I need to now market this audiobook. And I started to use social media, because when I published, I did it with a publisher who had an education package attached to the publication of the book, which is a great way to do your book, because you learn lots about the business of publishing and having a book.
That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, all the good publishers will offer something similar that bases not just your book and the publication of your book, which is a whole realm of things that need to happen, but it also includes education, because you don't know who you're going to become the other side of publishing a book. I set about doing as I was told and building social media, connecting with people, etc., etc. I had a connection in the US, a media CEO, and because 2019 was my year of being bold and saying yes no matter how terrified I was, I asked him a question about podcasting, because at the end of that audio recording, my friend Simone had sat me down and said, Toni, there's something really beautiful about your energy, your story, and your voice. You should be in media. Have you thought about podcasting and radio? And I said, no, not going to happen. No way. In true Toni form. But I connected with this guy out of Florida, and he said to me, why would you bother podcasting when you can live stream radio and have your own show? And I'm like, wow, didn't know that was an option. What does that look like? And there was an investment involved. And I said yes, because 2019 was my year of saying yes. I spent the first 6 months being sick and terrified every time I stepped behind that microphone.
Really?
But as I kept showing up, something started to happen. People started to comment and say, I love your show. I loved being on your show. You ask such amazing questions. How did you have that insight? Why did you know to ask me that question? I've never told anyone that before, but I've told you. And something started to flip in my head, and I thought, because it was investment, I needed to work out how I was going to make an income from this, because I'd gone from, high level roles and a good wage to nothing. And that was the inception of my first programs, which were Host Your Own Radio Show. And what evolved was, as I realised the technology that was around and realised the capability of being able to be in Australia and broadcast across the planet and reach more people, my entrepreneurial brain started to slowly kick into gear. And what that has evolved to is now I have audio, video, TV shows that are broadcast globally through big broadcast streamers, and also on non-traditional media platforms, or OTT, over-the-top platforms, where you can have streaming video on demand, pay-per-view, a whole range of things that open up the world, so to speak. And that's how we got to what we do now. So I have Toni TV as a channel available on all Roku, LG and Samsung smart TVs across the planet, plus available to download on iPhone and app and etc., etc. And underneath my channel sit two of my own shows. One is about authors and artists. So I co-host with a dear friend of mine, an international best-selling author in her own right. And we do an hour with artists or authors talking about anything from books and publishing to authors and their journey. The second show is the Everyday Business Show, where I talk to businesses and entrepreneurs across the planet about what they do, what they're passionate about, what their mission is. The second part of that model is the co-hosted series of shows where I work one-on-one with entrepreneurs, business owners, to talk about their journey in business. And we delve into how they got into business and why they do it and what makes it, and then we start talking about what they do. So I have this fabulous series at the moment with an Secret Service guy, and we talk about intelligence, surveillance, forensic investigation, interviewing, etc., etc. It's fascinating.
I bet.
And I love it.
I used to write mystery novels, so I'm sure I would love it.
I was just going to say, knowing that you write mystery, it's opened up a whole world to me. That there are businesses that complement services like the police and FBI, etc., etc., but they work in the private sector and they do a whole range of services that protect businesses, from your IP to your assets and your goods and services. So the co-hosted series are an all-in-one, done-for-you media production. So there's the shows, which are converted to podcast and redistributed globally. There's the videos that are edited and put onto a whole heap of non-traditional TV platforms, including Binge Networks USA, Zondra Networks USA, Hero Go, Paz, a whole range of them. And then underneath that sits strategy, social media, digital marketing, email broadcasts, PR packages for the US, and a whole range of things, so that busy business owner just has to show up for a session with me each week and a live show. And then we do the rest and everything in between. So I love doing that because I get to know individual business owners on a really deep level, and it's fascinating and I love it. And part of my discovery is that I love talking to people and telling their stories. And there's no different, as you would know, Juliet, there's no different in telling a personal story to a business story. And often they're interlinked and intertwined,
right,
and give reason for being in business. And then the third part of our company is the launch of Everyday Women's Network. So think Netflix for women, but in a way that promotes women-supported content, be that shows, podcasts, be that learning content, be that inspirational content, whatever it is, we will be launching that. And my bigger vision for that is that we will have a small subscription to the network, which will link you not only to TV content available whenever you want to access it, but educational content, because the pillars that undersit the company are inspire, empower, educate, and help. And with media predominantly male dominated, with many shows that are male centric, I want to flip that switch, and I want to have a revenue sharing model that gives women an additional stream to what they're normally doing, and provide a platform where women across the globe can go and know that they're going to get amazing female centric content. And then on the other side of that, the guys that I talk to, and I work with a lot of men, they're going, we need the Everyday Network. And I'm like, okay, just let me get the Women's Network TV streaming up and going, which is way in process at the moment, and then I'll do that.
In my spare time. I want to go back to something really quick here for a minute. We are running a course right now called I Love Content for the first time, where people are developing their content. Yes. And I was talking with one of the students this morning about, I'm scared to try. I'm scared to go live.
Oh, yeah.
And I was telling them that a lot of times, once we get over that fear, it's always, what is that little step you can take? And I really want to stress what you said about, you were scared half to death the first 6 months and you showed up. When I did my podcast, probably the first 24 episodes are embarrassing when I listen. But I did it and I got better. So
absolutely.
I want everybody to hear that you know, you're not going to come out a pro. You know, your first 10, maybe even 25 like me, they're going to be shaky till you get the routine down. But if you show up, you become comfortable. And I think that is so important for everybody here to understand, because as an author and an entrepreneur, you have to have content. And you have to do what's comfortable, but many times you have to get comfortable.
I was just going to say, Juliet,
not comfortable.
part of the reason that I'm here was that change in mindset that stopped me playing small and allowed me to show up as my imperfect self. And that's part of my branding, is I'm showing up as an imperfect, middle-aged gal. If I can do it, sure you can do it. Like, you know, you just got to get over yourself and realize it does not have to be perfect to reach and talk to the people that you need to connect with. And it's about connection. So take yourself out of the equation and just do it. So, Juliet, when I was challenged to start doing Facebook Lives, and I have to say, I'm much more comfortable in this space than doing Facebook Lives. I would much rather talk one-on-one with my guests and clients to a global audience than do a Facebook Live. So there you go, guys. Like, it doesn't make it easier, but showing up consistently, as Juliet did and as I've done, that changes something. That tells your brain that this is no longer a scary place, and fear is just a thought. Fear can't harm you. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be fearful, but then do it anyway. Part of one of my models. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
So true. And I have to say, the Facebook Lives evolved for me because at first I would show up perfect. I would have my makeup done.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got comfortable and people got to know me, I'd come in from running, sweaty, hat on my head. So, hey, I was out running. And I had this thought about what, and I think I almost got too comfortable. But so you'll get that natural, and
yes,
when it comes to developing content, what's important here is that's the trust basis of what you're doing. That's what's going to attract those people, is not only your knowledge, but your personality. Because for me, I'm not wishy-washy. I'm direct. I take action, people. And so I'm going to, you either like me or you don't. And I think once you
and it's okay, Juliet.
Yeah, and once you get comfortable, that's what people want.
Yeah. And they don't have to like you. Like, it's none of your business what other people think. Like, truly, it's not.
Yeah.
None of your business what other people think. And you will have detractors. By the normal process of being in the public eye, there will be people who attack, criticize, write bad book reviews, etc., etc., etc. Just gotta take it with a grain of salt, because it's not about you. It's about whatever you said or wrote that triggered them to respond in that way. It's not about you. It's about them. And you just respond in love and light. And someday, hopefully, that will be the thing that makes them think, oh, okay, maybe I need to look at that again and go, oh, that's not quite the way to interact with other humans, etc., etc. So it's very much about getting over yourself, which was a big learning thing for me, Juliet, let's face it.
Yeah, it was for me too. But once you do that, you're going to find that, and I think I talked about this at the event. I actually, at the beginning, had an avatar on my wall, and I would talk to people and I would look at it and I'd say, oh, this person isn't Kathy. Okay, not my people.
Yes.
and it was that easy to just let go and wait for my people to come.
Yes, exactly, Julia. Exactly. It's about, and again, I'll say this about women in our age group. There's a confidence and a knowing that comes with age, and I think it's a fantastic thing, and I am looking forward to being that wise woman. And I recognize that for you and I, we can actually look forward to living into our 90s, maybe even our hundreds. So there's a lot of life to be had, so why not just get on with it? Just do it.
Exactly. So, Toni, this has been great. Where can we find you if we want to reach out and maybe find out more about how we can start our own broadcast?
Absolutely. I, as you know, love talking to people one-on-one. That's my thing. So ToniLontis.com, ToniLontis.com. Really simple. And you can, if you Google Toni Lontis, all the socials will come up. There's a YouTube channel, all the channels, the podcast, everything will come up. Info at Toni Lontis, INFO at Toni Lontis, ToniLontis.com is my email address, and I would love to talk to people. If you've got questions, email me, connect on social media, send me a message, however you're comfortable connecting. I love getting those messages and I love getting those emails.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.